Heracon Publishing presents The Song of Leonard Cohen, Portrait of a Poet, a Friendship, and a Film, by Harry Rasky, narrated by Bernstein. For Arlene, whose great love is like a song. Acknowledgements. In the years since I created the film The Song of Leonard Cohen, I would occasionally dust it off in periods of manic melancholy. I always adored the symphonic poem that was the 1979 tour of Leonard Cohen, which I was fortunate enough to document in my own style. The sound of it, the color of it, would last in my memory for weeks. It haunted me. So Leonard never left me. Through my own musical daughter Holly and son Adam, and students of my class at the University of Toronto, I realized that Leonard crossed all time zones. He was a singer for us all. Along came Howard Astor of Mosaic Press, who suggested that somehow it was time to publish all of that, the story, the poems, the lyrics, which composed the film. Amy Land at Mosaic devoted her significant editorial and design to complete this book. In an astonishing remembrance of things past and present, Sony has just now wisely issued a newly minted CD. The film does not lose any of its original tone and texture. So now in 2001, we can again appreciate him. I thank you, Leonard, for your sound and your substance, and friendship I treasure. L'chaim, Harry Rasky. The mood seems right. The rhythm takes hold of me, and the music begins. Now let us share the life that is the Song of Leonard Cohen. April 16, 2000. I suppose I will never forget the phone call which came so recently from Leonard. It had truly been the winter of my discontent. Although I had escaped, I thought, to Florida to repair my damaged body, I had not been able to hide from myself. And each day my sense of mortality made me gasp, a mental agony that choked me in the brightness of colors and the monotony of sea sounds. I fled with my always supportive wife to the safety of Air Canada and the cocoon comfort of home. But here in Toronto, with its self-righteous smugness, I faced the always punishing Canadian winter. The wicked winter let go one final blast of frost and snow. If April is truly the cruelest month, I felt its lingering bite. On such a day the phone call came. The warmth of Leonard's voice, recorded on my answering machine at my Canadian Broadcasting corporate office, a place cluttered with memory of other poets such as Tennessee Williams and singers of soul like Teresa Stratus. I'm a collector of great creative beauty, and my office is stacked with their accomplishments. I am humbled by their offerings to us all. They tumble through my mind like the brightly colored figures in a Marc Chagall painting. Fantasy and reality and beyond the beyond. I praise them now as I did in my films, Meditations on God. If God is the great creator, these men and women have tried through paint and passion, words and music, to give us this day and every day personal fragments of their creation. I honor them. Leonard, the poet, offered simple words in his phone message that April day in the unlikely year 2000. Harry, this is Leonard. I just wanted you to know I watched your film on me, and it struck me I never thanked you enough at the time of the magnificent gift you gave with that film. Call me. Then he left his personal number. His thanks were not required. The film, The Song of Leonard Cohen, had been one of the creative pleasures of my life, an attempt to blend his poetry and his passion with my own. I do not watch it often because his sound haunts me, and it takes days, if not weeks, before I am free of it, if ever. If there was anything surprising about the call, and I am seldom surprised, is that the film has been finished 20 years earlier, and he and I had viewed it together in a Toronto studio one late August afternoon. 20 years and counting. I tried to reach him and left my home number. Another call came. This time he said, Harry, I missed a couple digits of your number. Call again. My hearing isn't what it used to be. I started to become somewhat neurotic, I think, about the CBC. The once almost great network, which had been home to my satisfying work and the work of others, had become kidnapped by middle managers who show little possibility for taste. What is worse, films such as the one I made with Leonard had become entuned by bureaucratic thinking, making it virtually impossible to share them with a public craving quality. Wintry thinking was strangling them. So the call became even more important somehow. I responded, speaking slowly and loudly but lovingly. He called again, spoke to my wife Arlene, who has always been shy in his presence. Finally, after a week, we connected. You see, what I feel about Leonard is that he has become much a myth as a man. He is the best poet, or seems to be, the poet we wish we all had the courage to become. We have tracked him as we would Keats or Shelley, enjoying the reported sightings. Leonard in Tennessee, Leonard up the mountain, Mount Baldy in California. Lately Leonard in India, Leonard universal sex symbol, Leonard monk and spiritual source. I sometimes think that Leonard is like Cary Grant, who in his prime said, yes, we would all like to be Cary Grant. I wish I were. Over the years I have often thought of him, called him when in Montreal, spoken with him when that was possible, but I have never felt it was necessary to have constant contacts. It's something like the sparrows which live in the caves near my chimney. I rejoice when I hear them in the morning, and I delight in them when they show themselves, but I know I can never catch one or want to. But they are my sparrows, and I am their friend. I am Leonard's friend, I think. But he needs to be free, of course. He has written about it often and sung its praise, like a bird on a wire, like a drunk in a midnight choir. I have tried in my way to be free. And that is how I first found him, all those years ago. It was, as I recall, in 1962. Imagine, almost 40 years ago. Let's start, then, on the sun-parched island of Hydra in Greece. I can never forget it. Hydra and the island of the mind. Anything that moves is white, a gull, a wave, a sail, and moves too purely to be aped. Smash the pain. It was that time of our lives. We were what is called in Yiddish buchers, young bucks, first apart and briefly together. For me it was a time of total adventure. For Leonard, a sampling of the delights that life could offer, usually centered around a starkly beautiful, sad, smiling young woman. He was a poet in development, always passion and pain, limited by the words to express the ecstasy and the agony. No music yet, to suffer along with the suffering. I was returning from a remarkable adventure in Africa, my second time round. My first tour included all of Africa south of the Sahara. Now I had returned to the magic mountain kingdom of Ethiopia. I still have the telephone book that covered the entire sheltered feudal nation. These are some of its listings. H.I.M. the Empress, Imperial Palace, Representative, Steward, Cashier. H.I.H. the Crown Prince, Palace, Palace Direct Line. H.R.H. the Duke of Harar. Do not try to call now. They are all either assassinated or in hiding. Ethiopia at that time looked so much like the land the world forgot. Tucked away on a high plateau, it was the country the explorers chose to ignore, too difficult to conquer in the conquistador days of colonialism. If the Bible was being relived, that is where it would be happening. So it seemed then, almost 40 years ago, when the emperor was treated like God, even when he was bathed at night alone in his bathtub, if not a divinity, then at least on first-name terms with him. I had filmed for a 2-part series called The 20th Century at CBS, what became The Lion and the Cross. Addis Ababa was delicious. Each street was a scene from Cecil B. DeMille's Dust and Delight. I decided to take the long way home. I felt the need to find Western civilization all over again. While I had been removed from our great culture, President Kennedy had challenged the Soviet Union with the so-called missile crisis, and we had been a breath away from obliteration. I had been in one of the few landscapes that never knew. Turn, back to the beginning or close to it. I had no appetite for Africa. I removed myself from the air Ethiopia, plain in Athens, Greece, and booked myself on a one-day excursion to the Greek islands, but found myself abandoning the ferryboat in Hydra the first stop. I'd always been a lousy tourist. I loved to taste the fabric and reality of the place. Hydra was a solid cliff of houses, rising from the sea, white on white with black-draped women, hiding from the sun, and glaring eyes of sea-parched hungry men. This is where I found Leonard. The expatriates from Europe and North America gathered daily at a cafe on the waterfront to enjoy retsina and shish kebabs and conversation. I was immediately welcomed. Leonard was a starkly beautiful young man, sitting perched really with a half-smile, chain-smoking cigarettes, and somehow both nervous and relaxed, if that is possible. Speaking quietly, warmly, but not revealing too much. A poem of the time. I dress in black. I have green eyes, in certain light. If others try to write this, death to them, death to anyone, if he or she unseal this poem in which I dress in black. And bless your eyes who hurry from this page, put a green-eyed man out of his misery and rage. Some things can be revealed by the poetry of the time, but mostly it was the struggle to find who he was, who he is. I'd like to read one of the poems that drove me into poetry. I can't remember one line, or where to look. It's a game he used to play. Don't look for me, I'm not there. He was always there, born a poet. There was no other way. He was also, I think, what his name suggests, a Cohen, a member of the select group, the high priests of Israel. He knew it then and now, even if it came wrapped in its own Tullus and self-doubt. I'm a priest of God. I walk down the road with my pocket in my hand. Sometimes I'm bad, and sometimes I'm very good. I believe that I believe everything I should. I like to hear you say, when you dance with head rolling upon a silver tray, that I'm a priest of God. Did I know that then? No. I knew very little about him, truly. He had come from the literary tradition of Montreal, and the two solitudes embraced more than the separate languages. Toronto, my birthplace, and Montreal were miles apart. I knew only he was considered a visiting star. But a poet? What was that? And what did it have to do with me, a curious wanderer to wars and love? If I learned anything, and I am still uncertain, we were not so far apart. Leonard, son of priests and grandson of priests, and I, son of a cantor, who sang so joyously and with melancholy of the loneliness of God. Elohim, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. But even then I felt an instant rapport. It is difficult to make same-sex lasting relationships, and I knew immediately that we would find a place for each other in our passage through life. There was then and now an instant feeling of gentlemanly caring about Cohen. Not physically, but in the matter of the soul. You could not be casual. The poet's heart would not allow it. The echo of God commanded something deeper. I was welcomed. A poem not yet written. A song not yet sung. One by one the guests arrive. The guests are coming through. The open-hearted many, the broken-hearted few. And no one knows where the night is going, and no one knows why the wine is flowing. Oh, love, I need you. I need you. I need you. I need you now. And those who dance begin to dance, and those who weep begin. Welcome, welcome, cries a voice, let all my guests come in. And no one knows where the night is going, and no one knows why the wine is flowing. Love, I need you, I need you, I need you, I need you now. There was much wine and much dancing in those autumn nights on Hydra. I discovered the Zorba the Greek sound of bouzouki music. It must have touched the Russian in my soul. Leonard was an involved spectator. The rhythms oozed out of my being at the small cafe where the emotionally scarred writers and artists gathered. The retsina was flowing, and how I danced. Around that time, his mythical dream girl, his Swedish companion, with whom he had lived the idyllic poet's life in his Hydra house, had left him. She, her spirit really, became enshrined in one of his classic songs of mourning. Leonard was in many ways like a great eloquent mourning dove. Come over to the window, my little darling. I'd like to try to read your palm. I used to think I was some kind of gypsy boy before I let you take me home. So long, Marianne, it's time that we began to laugh and cry and laugh about it all again. You know I love to live with you, but you make me forget so very much. I forget to pray for the angels, and then the angels forget to pray for us. We met when we were almost young down by the green lilac park. You held on to me like I was a crucifix as we went kneeling through the dark. Your letters, they all say you're beside me now. Then why do I feel so alone? I'm standing on this ledge, and your fine spider web is fastening my ankle to a stone. Now I need your hidden love. I'm cold as a new razor blade. You left when I told you I was curious. I never said that I was brave. Oh, you are really such a pretty one. I see you've gone and changed your name again, and just when I climbed this whole mountainside to wash my eyelids in the rain. So long, Marianne. It's time that we began to laugh and cry and laugh about it all again. At the time, Leonard was strictly a poet, a haunted, handsome poet. The song was yet to come, at least publicly. The music still in his head, waiting for release. Music to marry his lyrics. These were hydra afternoons of pure hashish and the kind of intense conversation that only the impractical, unlived can indulge in and consider vital. And perhaps they were. Like forsythia in their impossible yellows, before the seasons have washed away their innocence, and they become matter-of-fact bland green. Who can know for sure? And the wine was flowing. Each day the tour guide would come by and ask if I was ready to leave this rock of sensuality and pleasure. Each day I would respond, not yet, not quite yet. Leonard's home, which he had purchased, was halfway up the cliff. It was profoundly white, furnished with the naked essentials which I have since come to associate with his desire to never show any love of what the rest of the world might call comfort. It was monk-like, on an island that was dominated at its top by a nunnery, where the nuns could only be reached by a winding donkey path. They knitted gay, elaborate wool sweaters as the world below unfolded. There was an austere, remote romance about the whole place, parched white on the outside, but a heavy breathing of many emotional colors not far below the surface. The Mediterranean was still deliciously unpolluted in those days, and we would set the swimming hour as it suited the time between wine and conversation. Leonard and I always had a passion for swimming. In the late afternoon, before the siesta, the intellectual movable feast would catch the late sun, and the wine was flowing. We would play this game. I, as a filmmaker, had always had this large ego sense that the world was revolving around me. So then, when I left, somehow all the world left behind vanished. All places were a kind of brigadoon. So the game was that when the ferryboat turned the bend, if I were aboard, the island and its residents, our crowd, would cease to exist. One day the day came. I would return to New York and begin editing of what became The Lion and the Cross. Time to make my way back to Manhattan, despite the warning that had been offered by the Cuban Missile Crisis just a few weeks before that the world was indeed becoming a much more dangerous place. As the ferry turned the bend, I could see the group clinging to each other and holding on to the furniture led by Leonard. But of course, I was mistaken, and he remained a gentleman to the end. We had made plans for a return around the spring, but it would never be the same for me as that autumn, when it seemed the world might suddenly be coming to an end, the world of white. Anything that moves is white, a gull, a wave, a sail, and moves too purely to be aped, smash the pane. Never pretend peace, the consolum momentum has not, never will be kissed. Pain cannot compromise this light, do violence to the pain, ruin the easy vision, the easy warning, water for those who need to burn. These are ruthless, rooster shriek, bleached goat skull. Scalpels grow with poppies, if you see them truly red. And the forsythia blossoms, torches of yellow youth, were blowing in the wind of the 60s. The striving, driving was everything. Become a hero, find fame and certainly fortune would follow, and contentment. Yes, that elusive thing called happiness. Paradise? It was hard to see the paradise of the here and now, the paradise we hold in our hands, searching for something we thought we held in our hearts, and so it became Paradise Lost. There were many markers in Leonard's life, but what did they tell us? He had been born into a semi-rich family, as many Montreal Jewish families were, seeking stability in the then thriving clothing business. His great-grandfather, it's been said, was the first Zionist in Canada, with one uncle, an Obi, and a great-uncle chief rabbi. It was a time when the family had both a governess and a chauffeur. It's said that he was the fat little kid no one liked. His father died when he was 9, and he became attached more closely to his mother and sister. He felt like a beautiful loser. Irving Layton, the rough and tumble poet rogue, became a substitute father in many ways, a guiding rebel. Was it possible that you could be a Jew and poet and somehow survive in the wilds of Canada? He would try, succeed in a way and fail in another way, like a caged bird, always trying to be free, not sure where freedom lay. Certainly his attempt to move into the family business after McGill University was not the way. Trapped by material stuffiness, a month in law school left him hungry for breath. Graduate school at Columbia University, where he was advised by a wise professor, this is no way to become a poet. How about the simple life? An elevator operator, caged, confined, desperate. He relied on a $2,000 grant from the Canada Council to get him safely out of Canada. That's why he was the Canadian poet in residence when I discovered him in Hydra. Not that he needed discovery. He had already published a few books of poetry of varied quality. It was a time when Canadian literature was struggling to express itself and be heard. It required a mix of independence, arrogance, and a governmental handout. Others, like Mordechai Rickler, were struggling to create works that were not imitations of the angry young men of England or the rebels of Jewish American intellect like Philip Roth. But they somehow sounded too similar. In Mordechai's case, too angry to find the real richness of the roots which had provided him with life. He was truly promising. I recall strolling with him on a long London walk and telling him how I admired Son of a Small Hero. But the anger and European decadence would destroy any goodness that seemed to blossom. He seemed to me to become a garden of weeds, so little beauty in his splendid gift. Leonard was luckier, more gentle, more decent. He needed to express his anger. He turned down the Canadian Governor-General's Award for Literature when offered. But so what? His poet soul was intact. He came close to the edge many times, but always, perhaps because of his solid tradition, pulled back in time. When he came to visit me at my garret house in the New York Village, he told me he had flirted with the idea of going to work at Time magazine. Time was a slow death for any real writer, except perhaps for James Agee. But like many thoroughbreds who have a natural charm, they also seem to have a charmed life. In the 60s, he would have an opportunity to sing a couple of his songs at the 92nd Street Y in New York, one of the great world platforms for poets, the place alcohol-soaked Dylan had come to pave his way. His novel Beautiful Losers had become a Canadian success. The National Film Board of Canada found him, and my skilled colleague Donald Britton revealed what Leonard chose to reveal, a playful, handsome devil in a bathtub, bather and poet not yet singer. He was lucky, too, in his timing. Then Sunday morning on television was still a time of experiment and discovery. WCBS in Manhattan still had a commercial-free stage for talent, and so he sang his song on Camera 3, with its stylized black and white splendor. No waste of money on sets or costumes. Make it if you can, just with talent. And so he did. And a helping hand of respect from Judy Collins proved a profitable assist. His program was the most popular in Camera 3's history. And also he escaped the almost obscurity of the poet of the small press. Music, his music, would find him a worldwide audience. Even the New York Times had to take notice. The eloquent music critic John Rockwell had to pay his reluctant compliments. Said John Rockwell, "There is a lot one could dislike about Leonard Cohen, the Canadian poet and songwriter. His voice is limited in range. His tunes sound repetitious, and his persona is strange indeed, defensiveness elevated into art, with downright peculiar imagery and a constant lugubrious pall over all. But wait, here come the kisses and compliments. And yet he is pretty extraordinary, when all is said and done. The words are compulsive, but they have the strength of genuine, idiosyncratically imaginative verse. The tunes become hypnotic for their very repetitiousness, plaintive and modal in a manner that recalls medieval music and ancient folk tunes. Mr. Cohen's voice is limited in its range. It's quite evocative in color. Mr. Cohen seemed to emerge in the 1960s out of the post-Dylan American folk scene. But his way, even bitter sophistication, he really owes as much to chanting beat poets and the continental cabaret song as he does to the folkier and blues revivalists. The songs are full of varied imagery, but they keep circling back to love. Not necessarily the similar forms of boy-girl love, although that is certainly central to his concerns, but to older loves and spiritual loves as well. The audience filled the hall and gave every sign of helping that Mr. Cohen would return more frequently. Leonard was truly the first great vaginal poet. The women adored, even lusted after the balladeer of their bodies. Leonard had created a cult, and I loved him for it. My Hydra pal, my brother. Who could ignore him? I shared his new fame with delight. They heaped their awkward praise on him, searching for comparisons, some so remote as to be embarrassing. Leonard does that to people. You know, he is so much himself he unnerves you. Donald Henahan, the cultural editor of the New York Times, summarized him with, "On the alienation scale, he rates somewhere between Schopenhauer and Bob Dylan, two other prominent poets of pessimism. In capsule, it might be said that whereas Mr. Dylan is alienated from society and mad about it, Mr. Cohen is alienated and merely sad about it. Popular music is long overdue for a spell of neo-Keats world weariness, and Mr. Cohen may well be its spokesman this season." It is simple to try and make Leonard and his appeal simple, but the fact is he is as complex as a poem. What at first seems obvious is of course not so. This is why he has survived while others have and will vanish. He is beneath it all, clear as he sings. A singer must die for the lie in his voice. And so the painter who strives for perfect color, and all artists who are constantly training to catch up with God, who will not be caught. But how wonderful to try. The pop magazines tried to mold him in the mask of a pop hero. People magazine teased its readers with a photo of him in a gas mask, and then half a dozen pages of romantic poses. The cut line announced, "The face may not be familiar, but the name should be. Its composer and cult hero Leonard Cohen." And the playful comment, "The worse my voice sounds, the more authentic." The writer of the article adds, "Laryngitis in London on his recent tour sent him to a throat specialist for vaporizing treatment." And inside were portraits of the Cohen women. Leonard, my bachelor buddy, had married well. Not exactly. He lived with a woman for 9 years and had 2 children. I visited him in Montreal. She seemed out of context. Suzanne Elrod was a Miami